Assalamualaikum everyone and welcome back. If I wanted to work for free, I would choose to be a volunteer. But I'm an architect and you must know the difference. This is your very own architect Shahriyar and you are watching me on another episode of Let's Talk Architecture. हमने अपनी प्रीवियस वीडियोस में कुछ कंसर्न्स डिस्कस किए थे जो कि हमारे यंगर जनरेशन के हैं फ्रॉम अ वेरी सीनियर आर्किटेक्ट who happens to be architect Archistan Batool. He was at Arch Studio and he openly talked on all those issues जो कि किसी न किसी तरीके से हम लोग रिजॉल्व कर सकते हैं आने वाली जनरेशन की आर्किटेक्ट्स के लिए. स्पीकिंग ऑफ इश्यूज, और जब हम हमेशा इश्यूज की बात करते हैं बहुत ज़्यादा लोगों का एक कमेंट ही आता है कि हम हमेशा इश्यूज की बात क्यों करते हैं, बट इट्स गुड टू टॉक ऑन द इश्यूज. उससे ही होता है कि आप उनको एड्रेस कर रहे होते हैं, कोई सोल्यूशन निकल आता है. अच्छी चीज़ें भी हैं लेकिन बुरी चीज़ें अनफॉर्चुनेटली ज़्यादा हैं. आज हम लोग बात करेंगे लूप होल्स पे जो कि हमारी पर्सनैलिटीज़ में भी हैं, इंडिविजुअली भी, हमारे सिस्टम में भी हैं, हमारे एजुकेशन सिस्टम में भी हैं. उन क्या लूप होल्स हैं, उनको किस तरह से ओवरकम किया जा सकता है. फॉर दैट इन आवर स्टूडियो वी हैव समवन हु इज नॉट ओनली एन आर्किटेक्ट बट अ स्टूडियो हेड, a very good juror, a humble person and someone who has started a very good architecture initiative. We have on our show the very famous architect Ayesha Malik. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
कैसी? I'm good. कैसी हैं आप Ayesha?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Thank you for blessing us with your presence. Alright, so let's just begin the episode. So Ayesha, we would like you to tell us about yourself.
Okay, I graduated from ComSats in 2020 and I've been practicing for almost 3 years now.
Okay.
So it'll be 3 years in September. So,
Right.
And at the moment I'm currently working for a design-led studio by the name of Alvi and Syndicate Architects based in I9. And then I also, as mentioned, started a really humble initiative called the Arch Hive, which is I'm trying to make it a resource center for architecture students and fresh graduates so they can come and learn a few things from each other. And so we sort of promote collaboration in the field of architecture, especially when we're entering into the market, because I feel like that is the one area that I felt a lot of issues when I first started my career as an architect.
Alright, so आयशा, आपने बताया कि आप स्टूडियो हेड भी हैं एंड आई एम श्योर आजकल समर्स में इंटर्नीज भी आपके पास आ रहे होंगे. डू यू थिंक आजकल के जितने जो इंटर्नीज हैं आर दे ब्रेकिंग दोज बैरियर्स और दे आर बिलो एक्सपेक्टेशंस?
I think to a certain degree I feel like the architecture education has evolved in terms of some skills or some line of thinking that studios are trying at the moment. I've had the experience of going into juries and discussing projects with students, so I'm really excited to see some of the projects and the design iterations that they end up coming up with. But again, that being said, there are some areas that I still feel like students just do not address, particularly in terms of like how responsive your buildings are to the climate and things of that nature. I still feel like studios somehow are largely focused on theory and maybe fulfilling their own university curriculum's agenda to a certain degree and sort of leaving the students to fend for themselves when they enter into the market, because they don't exactly know what they should be knowing when they're entering into the market when it comes to actually designing building skins or exteriors or even in terms of planning how they're supposed to conceive those spaces, because I do believe that architecture is a very big responsibility. It will exist far beyond your lifespan, and if you end up designing something that's bad, it's going to be a problem for the users for the next 50 years.
आपने बात की थी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की, ठीक है. लास्ट टाइम हमारे साथ सर आरिफ था, उन्होंने भी कुछ ऐसी ही बात की थी और वो ये था कि आजकल की जनरेशन रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेने को तैयार नहीं है. लाइक नहीं, ये तो हमारा काम नहीं है, तो उनका काम नहीं है. और उसका सबसे बड़ा जो प्रॉब्लम, जो रीज़न है वो ये है कि गैप है बिटवीन प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ एंड द यूनिवर्सिटी लाइफ. तो वो जब आते हैं मार्केट में तो उनको नहीं ज़्यादा पता होता है ये क्या है, हमने तो सिर्फ डिज़ाइन करना है, हमारा तो जी काम सिर्फ डिज़ाइन करना है, बाकी तो कोई कंसर्न ही नहीं है हमारा. कंसर्न्स से नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन मेरा आपसे ये है कि इंक्लूडिंग मी, जो मैंने थोड़ा सा नोटिस किया और आजकल आर्किटेक्ट्स भी जो नोटिस कर रहे हैं वो ये है कि जितने भी नॉट ओनली इंटर्नीज, यंग आर्किटेक्ट्स भी, मेरे को खास इंटरेस्ट नहीं है फील्ड के अंदर, और हर चीज़ से बस वो नहीं होता जान छुड़ानी है कि नहीं दिस इज नॉट आवर टास्क, साइट पे नहीं जाना, ये नहीं करना, वो नहीं करना, हम तो सिर्फ 3D मॉडलिंग करेंगे और डिज़ाइन करेंगे एंड दैट्स इट। किसको हम ब्लेम करें इस चीज़ के लिए? इंस्टीट्यूट को करें, स्टूडेंट्स को करें, कहाँ पे डू यू थिंक द इशू लाइज?
I think instead of like phrasing it as blame, I think we should assume responsibility because again, architecture is a responsibility. It's a job at the end of the day. For this to happen, I believe that one step is to actually sensitize students towards this responsibility. I'm very certain that while I was studying architecture for 5 years of my life, not once did my teachers ever tell me that I would have to be responsible for maybe a family of 6 who just came to me and asked me to design their residence that they will be using for the next 50 years. When no one phrased architecture like this, obviously when you're a student you make these ambitious designs that may look nice at the exterior, will look pretty.
Practicality nahi hoti.
Exactly. They lack practicality from the plan sense, and that translates into the way that you shape the building as well. And I think that starts from your schooling initially, and then it also falls in the responsibility of the architects that you're actually under, because if they don't understand this, or they don't assume responsibility while they're designing for their clients and then also assigning those tasks to you, this problem persists, and then eventually our regulatory bodies don't seem to I suppose think it as important of a topic at the moment to talk about this as actively as they should. There should be some kind of active initiative towards making sure that students of architecture actually realize how every single line that you end up drawing on your plan will not only have consequences if it's wrong for the actual client, but it also increases costs if it's a very
environment affect कर रहा है,
exactly.
आपका future stake के ऊपर है.
Exactly. It also compromises your credibility as an architect if your building does not respond properly to the climate. I call it like just building failure, very simply, even if it's standing, but if it's not doing the job of providing shelter, then it doesn't matter what it looks like.
Speaking of problems and institute, हम बात कर रहे हैं स्टूडेंट्स की. स्टूडेंट में इशू है तो चलें टीचर्स को पकड़ें, टीचर्स को पकड़ते हैं तो चलें इंस्टीट्यूट को पकड़ें. इंस्टीट्यूट के पीछे जो हायर अथॉरिटीज़ हैं, द रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज, आर्किटेक्चर रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज, डू यू थिंक दे आर डूइंग जस्ट फाइन और दे नीड टू स्टेप अप?
I do believe that there should be an active effort in sort of standardizing the curriculum to this degree, because again when you talk about architecture education, there's one school of thought that believes that it's purely design, then there is one school of thought that believes that no, we should teach students this technical aspect of architecture during their bachelor's. They assume one body assumes that you will learn this when you join the field, but when I'm of the opinion that when you have not been told that this is the implications of your poor designing or your lack of interest in your own designs and everything, and the kind of consequences that actually result from that, I feel like the regulatory bodies do have to assume this responsibility. They can't they can't just assume that we're on this side and we're not on this side. They have to pick a middle ground and facilitate us both in when it comes to design, and then also facilitate us when it comes to learning the technical aspects of architecture. And I think a good way of doing that and is through workshops, is actual like live workshops where they actually teach students. So I have a particular affiliation and a deep interest in facade articulation and the exterior skin. So I will always be a champion for that. But obviously from planning perspective, like dedicated workshops or dedicated studio modules for these areas, and then also like showing students from the sketch level to the actual physical built level where that whole thing translates into. So I think when you sort of create like different models of learning for students, it'll be a much nicer way of teaching architecture.
बिल्कुल, आपने जिस तरह भी बात की थी कि इस वाली साइड को पता नहीं कि उस वाली साइड पे क्या हो रहा है, और ये वाली साइड क्योंकि जो मेन बॉडीज हैं आपको पता होना चाहिए कि क्या चीज़ हो रही है, प्रैक्टिसेस किस तरह से हो रही हैं, आपको कोई कंसर्न नहीं है तो वो आगे तक चीज़ अफेक्ट होती है.
Exactly. I feel like platforms such as Archistan, and I wouldn't call myself at the same level, but ArchHive also stemmed from this idea of a lack of resources on the part of our regulatory bodies. And even though I've been sort of diligently working on this for the past couple of months, but I've been able to meet so many talented people.
New faces.
Exactly, new faces that I did not know before.
You are doing good work. तो ये काम है I think हमारी regulatory bodies का कि सबको सामने लेके आना.
Exactly.
हम बात कर रहे हैं सबको इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी देने की, सबको वो लाइट देने की जो रिक्वायर्ड है क्योंकि सब अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. डू यू थिंक लेग पुलिंग, बीइंग इगोइस्टिक, हैविंग अ वेरी रूड नेचर एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स, क्या एक आर्किटेक्ट ही एक आर्किटेक्ट का दुश्मन है?
To a certain degree, at least when I joined the market, that is what I saw, and I still do see it in like a certain like age group of architects, and I feel like it only does more harm than it can ever do any good. From not only to the architects but also to the clients as well, because you're underbidding on a service that is actually essential when you are being hired as an architect, just so your competition can't get that project. But chances are that when you underbid, you compromise on the quality of the service that you're able to provide. When you offer unrealistic timelines, you're not only jeopardizing the project that the client actually came with in terms of quality, but you're also creating a problem for the actual employees who have to work on those tight timelines. So it is just two heads butting for no reason.
For no reason.
Exactly.
Just कि बस हमने रहना है और आपने कब तक रहना है?
Exactly.
और उससे ये हो रहा है कि वही हमें बिल्डिंग्स नजर आ रही हैं, वही फसाड्स हैं, वही सारी चीजें. खैर, if given the opportunity, अगर आपने चेंज लेकर आना हो, how will you bring it?
I think sort of bringing more of a studio culture in the office setup is, I think, one good way of doing it, because although architecture is a business and you have to run it like a business, but there are different ways of structuring it. So I have found that, for instance, if I take Arsyn as an example, I was not familiar that architecture studios could have like an actual studio business. So when I came into that studio, I liked that there was a sort of undefined hierarchy. There was one person who was in charge or two people who were in charge, and there is some kind of hierarchy, but it sort of levels the playing field. Everyone is at the same level.
Communication easy, yeah?
Exactly, communication is easy. Architects such as, I think, Ayesha Batool, in one of his talks, he had mentioned that he gives as much time to speak
and space.
Exactly, for junior
आर्किटेक्ट आपसे आके बात कर सकता है.
Exactly.
वरना एक वॉल होगी, वो अगर डर जाता है आपसे बात करने से. और यही चीज हमारे यहाँ सिस्टम में भी बहुत खराब है. स्टूडेंट टीचर से बात नहीं कर सकते, टीचर्स ऊपर नहीं बात कर सकते, ऊपर वालों के आपस में झगड़े हैं. खैर, हम बात करेंगे वुमेन इन द फील्ड ऑफ आर्किटेक्चर. बहुत दफा होता है कि पोस्ट मैरिज खवातीन की काफ़ी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज बढ़ जाती हैं. ड्यू टू सो मेनी रीजंस दे आर अनएबल टू जॉइन ऑफिसेज, बट दे डू वांट टू वर्क. ऑब्वियसली 5 साल आपने पढ़ा है, कुछ ने आगे मास्टर्स भी किया होता है. दे वांट टू प्रैक्टिस, दे वांट टू मेक अ मार्क. हमारे पाकिस्तान में अनफॉर्चुनेटली अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ नहीं हैं खवातीन के लिए कि वो वर्क फ्रॉम होम कर सकें या इस तरह की काफ़ी चीज़ें. सो हाउ वुड यू एड्रेस दीज इश्यूज?
As someone who's seen a lot of women actually have to leave the field because of this very reason, I think, of course, I can't speak from experience since I don't head a studio of that nature where I'm able to hire a lot of people. But I think one way you can facilitate architects, especially women in architecture, is by sort of allowing them this sort of leeway when they have to take time away from office. Obviously, you can't expect everyone to sit till 9 p.m. on a really harsh deadline. So I think to a certain degree, you have to create space for people to come and actually participate in your office, add value wherever they can, because at least the architects that I know who had to leave were actually quite talented, and their offices didn't want them to leave. But obviously, the responsibilities that they had at home outweighed the ones that they had in office.
Because अभी कोविड भी गुजरा है ना, कोविड में भी लोगों ने वर्क फ्रॉम होम तो किया था, ठीक है, जैसे कोविड वापस खुल गया, the firms are like नहीं हो, वापस आएंगे तुम आते हैं.
Yeah, exactly.
ये वाली चीज है.
Yes.
So मतलब like there is a possibility कि आप घर से काम कर सकते हैं, but उसके बावजूद.
So in my experience, I've had a few discussions with architects who run practices, and they're of the opinion that you can't do architecture at home. But I feel like when you're able to sort of fragmentize architecture and like the whole process of designing into certain tasks, because in offices you can see not the person who's making the plan is probably not the same person who's designing the elevation.
True.
So when you can chunk it out in an office setup, you can to a certain degree, you know,
आप घर पे भी दे सकते हैं.
exactly.
हाँ.
You can, and then you can within the 5 working days that you have in a week, you can ask them to come in.
एक दिन आ जाए.
1 day, 2 day, whenever they have something to show. So similar to what we used to do in university studios.
ऐसी है.
If it worked there, that I don't.
अब घर से कर सकते हैं तो फिर जरूरत थोड़ी है.
Exactly.
I want work from home.
I do enjoy the office culture, but obviously there are some people who just can't, but they're very good.
और लाइफ जहाँ इतनी बिजी हो गई है, सो हर चीज आपका टाइम डिमांड कर रही होती है, सो मेरे ख्याल में घर से चीजें हो सकती हैं. Anyways, before moving on to our last question, I'd like to play a pick it quick round with you.
Okay, this is not really the questions.
Yes, it's a surprise. So I'm gonna give you 2 options. You have to pick one, but quickly. Right. Number 1. The world is ending and we have portable houses. Would you like to live in a floating house, B, underground dwelling?
This is hard. I don't like both, but I think in underground dwelling. I don't like the idea of water.
Okay. Number 2. When you visit a museum, do you like A, interactive art, B, static art? Interactive, है ना? Number 3. The artificial intelligence era is here and machines are taking over. Would you A, use the local craftsmanship, B, use the cutting edge technologies?
I think both, but if I had to choose, I would use. This is going to be controversial, but I would use the craftsmanship. I like the slow nature of the whole process.
जिस चीज पे मेहनत ना हुई हो वो चीज अच्छी नहीं निकलती.
Yes.
और मशीन्स का खर्चा बड़ा होता है भाई.
Exactly.
Alright, number 4. If you were in charge of things, would you A, let the blue area extension happen, B, no, I would have gone with more parks?
I think parks are essential. You're already building so many high rises, you don't need more.
है ना, तबाह कर दिया उन्होंने. Number 5. Most housing schemes prefer similar facades for houses 12 malas or smaller. A, it looks decent, people design crazy stuff. B, people are different, then why the houses should be same?
The second option. I believe there's so much your residence is a reflection of the person who's living in it.
ऐसे ही है. Number 6. Positions for architects are open in both. Which one will you apply for? A, the movie Barbie, B, the movie Oppenheimer.
This is interesting. I watched both, so I really have to think about it. I think Barbie. I think it was more fun.
It was more fun.
In terms of the architecture.
Yes, I would also go for Barbie. Like, love to play with things.
Yes.
Last, you are running a firm in times of high inflation. Now, this is the question. A, would you allow work from home on fully pay package? B, everyone has to come or pack your bags.
The first option.
The first option.
Yeah, because I would want someone to do that for me.
चले ये देखेंगे कि जब आप अपनी फर्म रन करेंगे फिर क्या होता है, आपको दोबारा जरूर बुलाएंगे इंटरव्यू पे. Right, so Ayesha, your views about Archistan?
I think it is a very, very good platform, and I am so appreciative of you reaching out to architects from all over, different age groups, to initiate a very important conversation. And not only architects, I've seen you call on structural engineers and vendors and the ensemble.
जब सब लोग काम करें तो सब आके बोले ना.
Exactly.
And everyone has something to say about something.
Exactly.
So why not?
Exactly. I really appreciate that, and you are hosting really important conversations that I think have been very quiet for a quite long time. So I think in this digital age, this is one good thing that I see coming out from the architecture industry in Pakistan.
Thank you, and thank you आपके आने का. दिस एक्चुअली शोज के अगर आप एक और इनिशिएटिव भी लेकर चल रहे हैं which is somewhat similar to another initiative, तो इसमें कोई हार्म नहीं है, बीच में कोई वो नहीं आना चाहिए कि नहीं हमने नहीं जाना, हमने बात नहीं करनी है. आए बात करें, बात से बात निकलती है, आइडियाज से आइडियाज निकलते हैं और इसी तरह से चीज़ें बेहतर होती हैं. Alright Ayesha, thank you so much for your presence. I hope you enjoyed coming here because we did.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. It was great.
Right, thank you very much. Alright, so that was it. Please visit www.archistan.com and do not forget to register with us. It's for free. You can upload your project, participate in different ventures, and grow your business opportunities as much as you can. And do not forget to follow us on our socials that include Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you want to be a part of this conversation or any of our ventures, then direct message us or simply email us on info@archistan.com. Inshallah, we'll see you next time with a different guest and a different topic. Till then, Hafiz.